I own surfcityclothing.com, so
Okay.
they can have it.
But you know what I'm talking about? That there was
Oh
that
yeah,
feud.
yeah,
Yeah.
they can have it. They wanted it because it's for tourism reasons, and their waves aren't as good down there in Huntington Beach, and so they're jealous, and so they can have it. We'll stick to being. We know where the real Surf City is. We know where the Hawaiian Kings surf first at the river mouth.
Yeah.
We know we
Yeah.
don't need to be designated Surf City. We know who's. We'll
Yeah.
just go look at contest results.
Good call. Good call. So when you so you own the shop, and then where did the skating side come in? So side note, I don't know if I even told you this. I think because I grew up in Watsonville when I was younger, before we moved to Castroville after the earthquake. But I was like, my t-ball coach was Bill from Bill's Wheels in Watsonville,
I say
and I
shout
remember
out to Bill Ackerman.
the first shop right there in Watsonville next to Tropicana Market, and
Yeah.
we used to go there, and like it was I didn't realize and then it blew up later on when I was like in junior high school, and I was like, wait, Bill's Wheels from Watsonville, and it was like this whole
Yeah, Bill's the man, dude. He was definitely a mentor for me, and still is. Him and Kelly from On the Beach in Monterey, and Mike Locatelli, rest in peace. I mean, that guy was a fucking legend. The skating side came around. It's funny. Skateboarding was always like one of those things that people did, but it didn't really it was more of a transportation piece for most of us surfers, like to get to the beach and
skate so that you could go surf.
Yeah, and then we started doing little ramps and stuff, but then it kind of really blew up in the mid '90s and early 2000s and became its own like kind of industry, if you will, where this is pre skate shoe days. This is like pre everything. I mean, skating was pretty small still in the scheme of things, and then it just blew up. And so,
and what would you, in your memory, what was the time frame on that, from it being small to blowing up?
I think early 2000s, like surf was really ramping up at that particular moment. You had guys like Fletcher that were crossing over between surfing and skating, and you had a lot of guys that were doing both. And then you had, here came Sean, the kid that, what's his name, the redhead kid, Sean.
Oh, Sean White.
Sean White. That kid was surfing, skating, and snowboarding.
Yeah.
And so you started having these kids crossing over, and when the surf was flat, these kids would start skating more and more. And we went from having a little tiny skate shop in the back of the surf shop to opening up. We had two shops at one time on 41st that were a little bit apart from each other. One was a skate shop, one was a surf shop. And at that time, surfers and skaters didn't get along too well. So you had to kind of keep them separated from each other.
It's so funny. And I don't mean to offend anybody by saying this, but it's funny growing up in Watsonville, Salinas, like the reputations that those communities have, right? Certain demographic. I've had more drama, seen more fights and territorial gang type stuff in Santa Cruz than I've ever seen in Salinas, believe it or not. So, Salinas and Seaside and Watsonville have these bad reputations. It's really Santa Cruz that has all the drama, and a lot of it's related to surfing. Like each high school has their own little beach, and
these guys are going to get pissed at me right now because I'm from Salinas, and Flea always likes to call me tranny because if you're not born in Santa Cruz.
I mean no disrespect. I think it's funny that I've seen more territorial drama in Santa Cruz than anywhere else in Central Coast.
Oh, for sure, dude. And then there's the whole East Side, West Side thing, and they all think they're gangbangers until fucking real gangbangers show up, and then shit got real, and then then there were some guys in the surf industry that did. Surfing and gangs there's a lot of parallel chemistry and tribalness, and fortunately the West Side and the East Side embraced that mentality for a minute through the 2000s, and so there was kind of like this surf. There was like a surf mentality, there was a skate mentality, and then there was like a side of town mentality, like West Side, East Side, Midtown.
For sure.
And that took a while to break down, and it wasn't until
what about when the movie Point Break came out?
I mean, nobody really gave two shits about that movie, but
what did you guys think about that?
we were stoked that some of our
it was like a joke version, because I know there were some locals that were like in it, and there were like extras and stuff down. A lot of it was probably filmed down in LA. But is Keanu from Santa Cruz? Or he's from the Bay Area?
He's from Palo Alto, if I remember.
Palo Alto, okay.
Somewhere up in that area, but
it is somewhere in the Bay Area.
We were always. Surfers are always one of those things that we never wanted to be on the big screen, but then they wanted to be on the big screen. So it was always this challenge of how do you get there? And, surfing's pretty boring to watch, actually. If you go watch somebody surf, it's a lot of sitting.
You have to be very patient, yeah.
Yeah, it's a very patient sport. You spend 3 hours to catch 4 waves that give you 10 seconds a wave, but
yeah.
And it just
but it's the same with snowboarding. Really anything where you're having to like wait for just that one moment of going down the hill or going down the wave, like yeah, for sure.
It was, it's one of those things where, surfing, every time a movie came out about surfing, like, people were like, we would just laugh at it because it wasn't really how things were,
Of course. Like what is it, Blue Crush, or what was the other one?
Blue Crush, another one. But back to Point Break, I think the thing that I did take away from it is surfers would fucking rob a bank just to keep surfing. Like, that's how take a different way than, we look at the world through a different set of lenses. So you take weed and you take surfing, dude, I can't take anybody fucking serious in this world. It's like,
right.
Life, there's so much more to life than just punching a clock.
Isn't there a show about that on TNT? What's it called? Like, there's a show. Yeah.
That was a little bit realistic. I could see that happening.
Yeah.
I've always said there's a reality show in the making in the Avenues at the Point, where people can, all the different dynamics that go down. There's a lot of like beefs within people, and it's always.
So you were someone that was in the culture, but then when you went from not just being in the culture, but also being on the business side of things, both surfing and skating, how did you see? What would you say, mid to late 90s? It's got feedback.
For what? Sorry, I was.
No, sorry. Cam's on and it's like feeding back.
Cam?
No, like the shift toward the retail side, both of those things going more mainstream. Because I would say, like, I was in junior high in the late 90s, and that's when like Thrasher magazine came out. That's when all the different, like, everyone was wearing skate shoes, and it was more mainstream.
I think we didn't see it as being mainstream. I think we finally thought we just had an industry to ourselves, and then it ended up being a fucking blowout because everybody went into Nordstrom's and Costco and other places, and it ended up, it just ended up watering down the sport to where surfers are pretty picky. They never want to.
Yeah, for sure.
They don't really want to wear anything that they see people they think are kooks wearing, and sports weren't really a big thing. Like, nobody really liked to play sports. Jocks against surfers against skaters. That was a time where surfing finally, even when I was growing up, everyone's like, "Oh, you surf? What a stupid sport! You're some stoner surfer." And it was like we finally got our spot. You know what I mean? We finally got recognized.
What about? So I remember, I think it was the first or second, maybe the first official X Games. I remember out in Embarcadero, Pier 35 or 39 in San Francisco. And it was when Travis Pastrana was like 16. And I remember because like Sean Parker was out like handing out Napster stickers, and he's like, "Here, download Napster." I'm like, "What does download mean? What is Napster?" It's like, what? And I remember because I had this Napster sticker on my guitar for the longest time. I must have been like, I don't know, 8th grade, freshman in high school or something like that. But talk about the X Games impact on that whole scene.
So I was fortunate enough. I got to do some announcing at the X Games. I got to interview. It was down in Carson, California. I want to say it was probably 2000.
Oh, Home Depot Center or whatever.
Yeah, 2008, 2009. I was in the area where Danny Block was doing the slot car racing stuff, and the X Games kind of did start to bring all those sports together. You got to keep in mind that surfers are probably the last bastion of tribal sports that don't want to be controlled. Right. Skaters are the same way, but since skating's on land and you can kind of pick when you want to skate, you can't really do that.
It's a little more controllable.
Surfing's a little bit spontaneous, and so surfers are
seasonal.
Still pretty reluctant to like hitch up with anything. Surfing is still a tough one to. Not with all these wave parks now. You'll see the Olympics will have that pretty soon.
So all those things were happening. It was going more mainstream, and then the .com. So all this is kind of, and it's funny because a lot of what has been impacted worldwide started in California, right? Or especially like in either LA or the Bay Area.
It's always influenced.
Yeah. So how did .com and all, the internet, basically, this is pre-social media. Social media didn't probably come till 10 years later, but with websites and stuff like that, retail and news, how did that start to change things for you guys, like in the mid-late 90s with .com?
You know what? At that time, I've always been kind of a bleeding edge guy. I mean, I was streaming live surf cams from the Point before Surfline was. I was doing live streams of the Expendable concerts in my parking lot. We owned and operated skateboards.com, surfboards.com, snowboards.com. We were one of the first direct to consumer e-commerce platforms.
Who was doing your hosting back then?
Back then, you had to have your own hosting. So you had to have your own box and your own, you had to manage your own server. And you had to have your own server certificates. It wasn't like today you could go to a big cartel site and you're up and running.
Yeah.
I had to build my own e-commerce site. I had to build all that shit out.
There was no GoDaddy. There was no Square.
Well, there was domain. There was Registrar, but the hosting thing, there wasn't WordPress. This is pre-Facebook.
Right.
So, when I built out skateboards.com, knowing that skaters were always filming themselves, we had a component of like a Facebook wall integrated.
That's true. I would say more so than any sport that I can think of off the top of my head. Skateboarding was a pioneer when it came to vlogging and what's the GoPros? Like whoever came up with GoPros, that was pre-GoPro. But what I'm saying is skaters were doing that kind of action live filming, probably more so than any other sport that I can think of.
I think the camera I used was a VX1000. It was an aluminum body camera. It was super light. It had a handle that you could do follow-alongs with. I've always been passionate about filming. You know what I mean? And so I was involved with a lot of surf movies in the surf industry. Josh Palmer, Garen Mile, Taylor Steele. A lot of those guys were doing movies. And then, we actually did a movie with Barney at Sundance. He had one called Digital World. And so filming was always a kind of a big component of action sports at the same time.
Yeah, for sure. I remember one time being in San Francisco and almost getting hit by some skaters. And I was like, what the heck? And it was like a group of skaters. And they were filming going down Lombard Street area. You know how gnarly San Francisco is with how steep the roads are. And the dude was skating backwards, scrunched down, filming. The most impressive part was not the skaters, it was the guy filming, because he was with not even looking, just filming and skating so intuitively. And I thought, man, I was pretty good at sports like football, basketball, baseball, those kind of sports, but when it came to boards, I just didn't have the coordination, and it was next level.
I did a bunch of stuff for Red Bull up at Manny Mania when they would do San Francisco, again filming primarily, and lost a lot of lenses filming because kids would shoot their boards to your camera or whatever, and you had to get the shot. You know what I mean? You had to. But we blew through a lot of cameras.
I feel like somebody in the skate world should be getting royalties for the fisheye filter that all the cameras have now.
Oh, dude, I had the gnarliest wide angle lens you could ever imagine. The fisheye lens. It was so sick. I busted 3 of those. They weren't cheap back then either. Nowadays,
nothing was cheap back then.
No,
nothing was cheap back then.
$1,500 lenses.
So, one thing I do appreciate about your era of guys, even like Tony Hawk, that they were the first generation. A lot of times, your parents or maybe your uncles and aunts, not quite the hippie generation or whatever that was coming up in the 60s. A lot of them maintained that lifestyle. Some of them moved up to the Triangle, like we talked about with Tim, and kept it going. A lot of them, though, assimilated to the culture. A lot of them assimilated to the culture, right? I mean, there's that SLC Punk, that movie, right, about with Matthew Lillard, where he talks about, the dad basically says, what does he say? Oh, I didn't sell out, I bought in. And there's a lot of generation that maybe in high school or college, they partied and they had all these ideas, and all of a sudden at some point they kind of quote unquote grew up and got real jobs and bought houses. But then there's a different generation that kind of was able to maintain, and part of it is just style, being in California or whatever, but you'll see 50, 60-year-old dudes that are dressed still skate shoes, rock, and looking good. Yeah, no, but I'm saying, but having families, owning homes, owning businesses, but never quite transitioned into the normal life, so to speak.
Yeah, that's me.
I know. Talk about it.
I tell people all the time that are out in the water, that are out there as a sport. Surfing ruined my life. The whole action sports world ruined my life. And I say that in a good way because it's allowed me to travel. When I say ruined my life, it's actually sarcastic because
of course
everybody else punched a clock, went to school, became professional, had homes, had houses, did family stuff. I still did all those things, but I just did it all on as much on my time as possible. And
yeah your
so,
terms
yeah, so that I could travel. I think I don't care. I have a nice car, but I don't have a car payment. You know what I mean?
right
I try to limit my expenses so I'm
right
fluid and I can travel to wherever. And I think, for me, surfing is my church, man. Like skating's important to me. I'm a little older. I don't skate very often actually at all anymore, but
not good for the ankles.
not good for my knees or hips. Surfing, on the other hand, is like, that's it, bro. That's my fucking whole world. So when I paddle out in the water and someone's being disrespectful or they're not appreciating the area or they're not paying attention to how it all works, you're disrespecting my church. You're disrespecting everything I've
For
put
sure.
my life into. Missed Thanksgivings, missed Christmases. Surfing is a drug, you know what I mean?
So how can someone who, because I know there's the opposite extreme of that. People can be very rude, right? And on one hand, you do have to share the beach a little bit, and you do have to be, if someone's just getting started, whatever. But so there's extreme cases, obviously. How can someone appropriately show up there? Let's say I'm a brand new surfer, I want to go try, and I accidentally go to the wrong beach. What's protocol to be respectful?
So yeah, it's a great question because the way that I learned was through being brought up by people. It's truly a sport. It's a sport of kings, right? And so you have to be brought up and invited into it. And so I was fortunate enough to get invited into it, and then you learn by that barking dog mentality of etiquette. When you're in the wrong spot because they'll let you know.
Right.
As somebody now coming in, because it's so crazy, there's just a couple key points. Number one, always know your limits in surfing. Don't put yourself or anybody else in danger because you want to surf. Number two, recognize who's in charge in the lineup. It's fluid. It changes. Don't fuck that up. If you fuck that up, you're not surfing there anymore. You're getting kicked out.
Is that an age thing or a skill thing?
No, you can tell. It's kind of like how you walk. You know what I mean? You can tell within 2 seconds if you know how to surf when you paddle out. And then the third thing is if you do get a wave, don't fuck that up because once you do that in a new spot, you're never going to get another wave. And so you got to understand the locals are going to regulate. They get priority. You can't paddle around. The locals fight with each other.
So how would you obviously none of this is probably going to happen in a perfect scenario, but if let's say you're on vacation in a new spot and let's say you didn't know the locals, but you wanted to go surf somewhere, how would you go about it?
So first of all, I'd watch. I do my homework on that break before I go. Okay. And then I watch and see who's out there. Fortunately for me, it's already ingrained in me. So if I don't know the people in there, then I just hang back and I pick up the scraps.
Yeah.
It's what it is. And
it's an honor system.
If you show respect,
yeah,
then usually somebody will jump you in. Surfing, everybody does want everybody to have the aloha and to be stoked on surfing, but not everybody gets that piece. And we have a lot of it. And unfortunately, as you can see in America with this COVID-19 thing, we have a lot of entitled motherfuckers that they think because they can, they should be able to. Well, that ain't going to work out in the water. We're going to put you in your place and you can go home and tell your girlfriend that you surf, but that's not what
how much have you seen, social, obviously skaters did, I think to me were some of the first people to film themselves sports wise.
Oh, yeah.
But with the advent of social media and selfies and that kind of thing, how much have you seen that get in the way of outdoor sports? It's been a beautiful thing because it also exposes people to things they might not have seen, but it's also probably for people that are just there to do it, not necessarily take a picture of it. How have you seen that effect on it?
Well, there's always a photographer or videographer on the beach if there's somebody out surfing that's worthy of filming, number one. But I think with the advent of the GoPro, you got a lot of jokers paddling out with the mouth one or with the stick one, and so they do stupid things sometimes. They drop in on people. They're paying more attention to being filmed than they are to being safe, and so they end up running somebody over. But overall, I think if everybody could watch themselves surf, a lot of people would quit surfing because they suck.
So, well, you know, I mean, it's similar. The golf also has similar, you know, etiquette and rules and kind of spoken and unspoken rules. Each club kind of has their own set of rules, but there's certain things that even when you're playing beer pong, you always ask, "Oh, what are the house rules?" You know, it's kind of a thing that most people do when they go to a new spot or are playing a new sport. Um, so, how did you transition from the active sports world and start to add media to the mix? Because you also have had quite a media career. What was your start in media?
Shoot, my start in media, so I've always been a guy that likes to tell stories. I'm the king of telling people, like, what's the word I'm looking for? I'll think about it later. But I tell a story in a riddle instead of just telling the story. Metaphor guy, and
Mm-hmm.
so I've always really enjoyed being behind the camera or producing or telling a story, and then and that came especially from the action sports world and just being involved with the athletes that I was involved with. And then, I stumbled upon the opportunity to work with the guys at KDON, Sam Diggity and Showbiz and Boy Bob.
Shout out to Sam and Showbiz.
Morning Madhouse. Those guys.
Are they still broadcasting right now during all this?
Oh yeah, every day.
They're in studio or remote?
Sam, they're both doing it remotely.
Okay.
But I mean, it's an audio show, so it's easy to do remote.
Yeah.
But so I was the third or fourth. Mike Domingo was in there too.
Yep.
Domingo was fun to play with. Shakes, a guy named Frankie Aponte, he was in there.
Gray hair, don't care.
Daniel was another one. He was a good one. We went through quite a few people.
Chad even did a little stint. I think he did 1 or 2 sessions. I was living up in Seattle, and I woke up early. He filled in for Frankie a couple times.
Oh shit! I must not have been. So I did that show with those guys pretty much solidly for about 7 or 8 years before everything kind of started to deconstruct in terrestrial radio, and then I started doing the Ricky Danny Surf Report. That's my name. Was Ricky Danny on the air, and we did the
it's a play on Ricky Bobby, right?
My name was either going to be Danny Honcho or Ricky Danny. It was a Talladega Nights, and Showbiz, you don't get to pick your name in radio, so I was blessed with Ricky Danny, thank God. And so, if you go back and Google on YouTube,
I know who was a guy back in the day. I think it was my principal's son, Scott Hurt. I think he was a stunt monkey. Was one of the ones back in the day.
Okay. On KDON?
Yeah, on KDON.
Oh, dude, the things that we used to do stunt-wise, we used to eat stuff. We used to go into, we used to do prank phone calls. We used to, we would beat each other up all the time with just different things. It was a super fun show. But that really helped me to learn how to be a product as a media asset and how to speak, how to perform, how to rock the mic. All those things that you need in order to kind of entertain people. And I'm super blessed that I got to learn from Sam and Showbiz and the people over at KDON because
awesome crew.
Planning on doing radio. I went in to do one session and I hit Boy Toy Bobby in the nuts with a frozen puck of cookie dough on first shot. And they're like, "You're on the show, dude." And so I was
definitely Jackass vibes for sure, right?
Oh, totally. And so then I would do that day. I would drive down from Santa Cruz to Salinas at 5:30 in the morning. Then I would do the show till 9:30, eat Mexican food right there next to the station at 10:30, and then jam back to Santa Cruz and open up the surf shop.
Oh, it was the old studio right across from the rodeo grounds, right?
Yeah.
I think they moved
right there. Quito's in Salinas, yeah. And then there's that other place right there on Main Street at the very end, right before you get up to 68. That little breakfast place. I can't think of the name. We hit those two places pretty much like clockwork after the show.
Yeah,
but
nice.
Just super blessed to have Showbiz and Sam in my life, and got to do a lot of great stuff. DJ'd the Palomar on New Year's, got to do summertime bashes down in Salinas, and
do you remember? Man, I don't know. I know now it must be like a logistical nightmare to pull off, but I feel like in the 90s maybe early 2000s, they were having, remember those beach fests they would have in Santa Cruz, by the boardwalk, concerts on the beach. How did that come about?
We did that one with Really
how can we bring it back? Yeah, I remember.
Fuck, I don't know. What's up, Chappie? Doing 360s today. I don't think you can, dude. That's pretty much. I mean, people are pretty much anti having fun anymore, so you can't do that stuff.
Well, especially now, it's going to be
not in my backyard kind of shit. You know, what
it's
I mean?
It's gonna be interesting. Well, that's the problem is that a lot of Silicon Valley money has come in and taken over Santa Cruz, and it's tough. It's tough because like as a human being, you have one feeling, right? And as a business person, politically, it's hard to kind of have them all in sync, but there's different, there's pros and cons to every scenario. But things have definitely changed over the last 20, 30 years. That's for sure.
Absolutely.
So when you tell us about your time, so you're working with KDON. Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, I thought you were going to talk about jail. I didn't want to talk about that. Go ahead.
Oh, no. no. We don't need to bring that up. You're getting into media with KDON, which was awesome. Love those guys. So fun. You had the businesses going on. They had the shops going on. Talk about like
because of KDON, bro. Because of KDON, because of Domingo, that's how we all know each other. You know what I mean? Was because of that.
For sure. That's true. That's true.
I mean, we're already bouncing off each other, but Domingo really, I don't like to give that credit from anything.
Well, we're gonna have it. I'm gonna have him on live one of these days. Shout out to Domingo for sure. Okay. How did you then start with the nonprofit with the Skate Against Hunger, or what was it called, and then also the Grind Out Hunger, and then also the Santa Cruz County Food Bank, actually, which I grew up going to because my grandma used to work there. So we would basically, my grandma, rest in peace, she's from Mexico, from a little town outside of Chihuahua, Mexico. And she came over, I think, in the 50s or 60s, and basically lived the rest of her life in Watsonville. But she was a volunteer at local schools and at the food bank. And so we would go help her, like load these boxes, and if you volunteered a certain amount of hours per week, you got to take home a certain amount of food. So she would volunteer for the community, bring a bunch of food to her house, and then our family would go like shop in her garage, basically. Like that, it was pretty cool. But yeah, looking back now, I'm like, oh man, maybe that wasn't so cool, but at the time it seemed cool.
Yeah, I was a recipient of the government cheese and the the dry powdered milk stuff. My grandma, God love her as well, and the east side, she would cut milk with dry milk, and we'd take 1 gallon.
Yeah, people don't understand. Food stamps back in the day were actual stamps. It was like a different type of currency, and it was very obvious. It's not a cool debit card like now. Yeah.
Did you get the cheese delivered to
you got
your
like
door?
A book of stamps, yeah. Yeah.
We didn't get the book of stamps, but we got like the block of cheese that was like this big, just on the door.
Yeah.
Dude, not to date myself, but we still had milkmen when I was growing up, and so the milkman would bring us our government block of cheese, and we would have to go with that. And so, ironically, you asked me about the nonprofit. It's like, so I was doing really good in the surf and skate world. Kind of had left Salinas in my mind. Like, it wasn't like Salinas is awesome if you want to like die. And so it's like I wasn't really planning on ever going back there, and except for to do the radio, which bugged the shit out of me to even go to Salinas to do the radio. But I forgot, dude, what it was like to be hungry, and I forgot what it was like to have my friends be hungry, and I forgot what it was like to just not what it was like to know what like being comfortable was. And I had kind of distanced myself so far that when the food bank had come into my store around 2001. 2002, they, telling me that kids were going hungry in Santa Cruz. To me, Santa Cruz used to, Alex, there used to be milkmen, or milk people to be proper. And so, it fucking crushed me to know that, like, in a town where I thought everybody was killing it in Santa Cruz, that there were kids going hungry. And two things I know about kids going hungry is it's not their choice, it's their situation, and so. You can rag on people that are homeless on the street. You can rag on people for not pulling their own weight or pulling themselves up by their bootstraps or whatever. But when you don't even get a chance coming out of the gate to have any sort of success, like you're fighting to fucking eat, and you're being food shamed at school because you're getting free food tickets and the kid down the way can get a Mountain Dew and a bag of donuts. Like, it's nuts, And
it's true, man. I mean, it's you don't think about it as much growing up, but I remember those days, and there is a difference, and it's a slight difference. Obviously, we're all at the same public school, but even within the public school system, there's different levels. There's different classes, so to speak, right? And
you had to wait in a different line if you had the free lunch ticket. You didn't get to go grab your lunch and go out to the playground. Your fucking half your lunch was spent standing in line waiting to get turkey gravy.
Or people now are all about flexing with kicks and the car they drive, but the original flex back in the day was your lunch pail,
your lunchbox.
So if you got lunch from the school, you probably didn't bring a lunch pail because you didn't have anything to bring in there.
Yeah, and sometimes, bro, I had you would just avoid even getting lunch. So I had made by that point I was fairly well seated in the surf and skate industry. I had a lot of great relationships. I was deep with Kadon. And so I launched Grind Out Hunger, and I used, basically surfing, skating, snowboarding, and music to feed kids. And we enlisted like James Durbin and Collins and Sean Barron and Nick Lamb and all these skater kids and all these musicians, Royalty. Shout out to Royalty. All those guys, and shout out to Cruzmatic, Reggie, and Jason were my boys. Chris Renee, while he was,
Chris,
not totally sure what he's doing right now, but I see he's doing new music, and I want him to be positive. But so all those guys jumped in behind it, dude, and we made feeding kids cool. In fact, we were kind of like a gang. We would straight fucking muscle people to give us money. And Gambit was a huge supporter, dude. Threw a bunch of hip hop shows down in Watsonville. And we fed kids, dude, but we did it the way we should have done it to begin with, which was no rules, just feed kids, just give them food, And that caused a lot of problems. Like, all the powers that be didn't like the fact that I wasn't qualifying kids. And then I said, fuck you even more, and went and opened up an indoor skate park on 41st Avenue when I had to close my shop. And so we were feeding 60 to 80 kids a month there, and that was pissing off people because, one thing I know about kids, dude, is they don't eat if they're not hungry. An adult will take a sandwich for later, will take a drink for later. But a kid, if a kid's not hungry, a kid's not eating. So if the kids came into the shop, we just fed them, dude. We didn't ask them if they had food at home, because sometimes rich kids don't always get the best food too, Well,
and one of I was, when I was working at the Rec and Park District, you and I were talking about doing a possible collaboration because we have that little skate park in Castroville. And I remember, so my heart has just always been to help the community, right? Awesome. And I've done it working through the church, and which was great, but then also ultimately
you do a lot of great work, man.
Well, thank you too, man. But what I was saying is that doing it through the church comes with its own red tape and bureaucracy, right? It has to get approved by the board, has to go through this. Okay, fine. So then I was like, all right, I'll do it as a coach and I'll work through the schools. Schools have even more bureaucracy and red tape about what you can do and what you can say and how you can do it. And I mean, we were trying to host events, and we had to get permits, and then we get denied, and then it costs a lot of money. We're trying to do free events, and we have to pay all this money to the school district. It's complicated, I understand, but it was frustrating. So then I'm like, okay, I get this government sector job. I'm like, great, now we can just use all these resources for the community. Well, every little thing has to be tracked and monitored, and if you're going to get funding from the state, you have to do reporting, and there's all this kind of stuff. So I learned about the back end of both the government side, the church side, the school side, and at the end of the day, I just was like, you know what? I had always, coming from growing up kind of in a poverty, type area, and growing up with that mentality, I didn't really think big. I didn't really think, I'm going to be successful and make all this money. That wasn't really on my plan. And, but I started to realize, you know what, man, these guys don't get it. They don't see it. And unfortunately, there's a lot of good people in the quote unquote system, but there's also a lot of people that don't want to rock the boat. They don't want their job to be in danger. They don't want their, record to be shown. They just want things to go as normal, kind of show up, punch a clock, and feel good about themselves, and not realize that we could be doing so much more. But it's easier to be like, well, we can't because of insurance, we can't because of liability, we can't because of the board, or we can't be whatever. So that's, I think, where you and I connected as well. So you know what? I'm going to go out. I'm going to be successful on my own terms, and we're just going to do this. I don't care. I'm not going to ask for permission. I'm not going to ask for the board. I don't need the help from school districts or governments or churches. Like, I would love the help, but I'm not going to wait for them to get their shit together, because a lot of times they take too long, and there's kids that are going hungry in our own neighborhoods.
Well, and to that extent, I never ask for permission in anything I do. It's one of the biggest things that gets me in trouble. I'm usually a forgiveness guy. And so, I formed the only fucking child nonprofit with the NBA ever, with Grind to Hunger. We were doing ball tosses at the arena. I had worked out a way to get Plantronics at the time to give us the whole back corner of the arena to bring kids in. I just didn't. To me, it goes back to looking at, like, because I surf, because I skate, because I live my life on my own terms, I look at things way different. To me, there's always a way to get something going. You know, there's always a way that you can, you know, get around the red tape, that you can fucking, dude, I built an indoor fucking skate park on 41st Avenue. Thank God John Leopold supported me. But I straight up just go ask him. And to your point, the reason nobody wants, everybody's afraid, they're a bunch of pussies, dude. They just need to, like, put their foot down and, like, do what's right. I'm longing for a leader on any party. I don't care if you're Republican, Libertarian, Democratic, fucking step up and do what's right. Take care of these homeless people. Take care of these addicted people. Shit. I'm excited.
That's how passionate you are.
You know, I'm tired of seeing people take the front. You know what I mean? It's like, you want my support. You want my vote.
I don't. Yeah. On a national level, it's complicated, and who knows, right? I don't even like to express my opinions on social media about what I believe in national politics, but no. But locally, I do believe that we can make a difference, and I do believe locally, regardless of what you think philosophically, I think we can all agree that kids in our community should not go hungry. I think we can all agree that you know, small businesses should have support.
But on real, to just throw some shit out there, ain't nobody want you to do the right thing. Everybody wants you to fit in the cog. So when I was out there trying to feed people, and when I was out there doing the things that I was doing, there were a lot of people that were not happy with that, because I was messing with their livelihood. Hi, Nora.
Right.
I was messing with their ability to stay in business, and I wasn't looking at it as a business. You can go look at my 990s on Grind to Hunger, and you can go back fucking 10 years, dude, and I never took a dime from that organization, and never will.
Right.
And it's still going, but we have to be low-key, because anytime I get press, it just riles up the powers that be in this town, and frankly, I get in trouble if I throat punch somebody nowadays. So
I know. We have to be careful. So how did you go from, you know, you're building that career, you started to transition out of the surf and street side on the business side. How, you know, tell us about Santa Cruz Warriors and how that came to be.
So ironically, I originally left the shop and kind of wound it down, just because I you know, partly because of the recession, but partly was just an opportunity to change it up. I'd been doing it for 20 years.
Brick and mortar was changing too, right?
Partly at that time. I mean, you know, but also it just wasn't fun anymore. And so for me, I had lost the motivation to do it. And so I went to work at the food bank for 4 years, became their chief development and technology officer. And they really, you know, are doing a big service for our Warriors coming to town. And I had an opportunity to help put that piece together between the city, the Warriors, and the boardwalk. And I literally helped orchestrate some of the deals to facilitate them getting going. And I'll never forget, I quit the food bank kind of just without even having a job. And I walked into Jim Wireman's office, and who was the president of the Warriors, and we were already having interaction. What's up, Joaquin? We were already having interaction with people, and I said, hey, I really want to work here. And he goes, yeah, we don't have a job for you. And I was like, well, what do I need to do to get that, to be able to work here? He's all, go sell a floor gym. Go sell a logo on the floor. They were $75,000 a year at that point. So I did. I went over to Plantronics. I worked a 3-year deal. I interlaced Grind to Hunger into it. They bought 30 season tickets a year in the end zone, which were the hardest tickets to sell. They did a floor gym for 3 years. And I brought in a $300,000 contract to Jim Wireman, put it on his desk, and said, okay, when do I start? And he's like, look, you're the director of sponsorships now. Go. You know,
like a boss. Bio.
Dude, I never even watched basketball. I never even knew the sport. I didn't know anybody. I knew Curry, I knew a couple people, but I had no idea.
Well, it happened to coincide with the explosion of the Warriors.
Sure. But so for what I saw though, Jordan, I think you'll respect this, is that for me it was less about the sport, it was more about an opportunity to bring an economic stimulus to the downtown businesses that go to sleep from September to April, which is exactly the off season of our summertime.
Right.
And it was something people that are coming over the hill and crowding our beaches and shit. And so I saw it as a village green. You know, so Jim Wireman and I saw that on the same page, like village green, like, you know, a place where everybody can meet. And I went to work there, dude. I did 4 years there. I ringed out. I got both rings. And in case you guys want to see, that's what I've got on my hands right now is my rings.
Yeah, show them off. Show them off.
And,
I'm going to go inside. I think the reception's getting a little bad. Show them off.
So I was blessed. You know, working for the Warriors was one of the best organizations I've ever worked for. They are a top-notch organization from the top down, and I have to give a shout-out to Dana Knops and Mike Flynn, who introduced me to Dana. You know, Matt Dinestra, all my people over there at the Warriors on that beginning crew. Leone.
How does it work with Santa Cruz and Oakland, like the main team? So the main team still owns the minor league team?
Yeah, the main team bought the team out of South Dakota and moved them to Santa Cruz. So I had the opportunity to be on from the very beginning with those guys, and it was funny. They'd have me. I remember at a time I was. I don't think I'll get in trouble for telling this story, but I'm gonna tell it.
Let's hope not.
So we were doing a meet and greet with our season ticket holders, you know, and we had Jerry West and Rick there, and I didn't know who either one of those guys were, and so I was having them sign basketballs for sponsors, and Jerry West, obviously, I was informed very quickly thereafter. He's the logo on the short, so I knew who he was, but then I didn't know who Rick Barry was, right? So every time I'd hand the ball to Rick Barry, he would look at me like, he's like, why am I signing this? And after like the third or fourth time, I was just like, look, dude, I don't really give a fuck. I'm just trying to get these things signed first. I don't know who the fuck you are, but just sign the fucking ball. Jerry's just signing the balls, dude. Why you got to be so difficult? He's like, you don't know
Rick
who
Barry,
I am?
Rick, he's and like the greatest Warrior besides Steph Curry.
And he gets up, dude. He gets up, he looks at me, he walks over, and he takes his place because we're in the court, and he shoots an underhanded.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, fuck, okay, I know who you are. Sit down and take your fucking ball. You know? And so he went into the office the next day and told Jim Wireman, he's like, I really like this guy, dude. He didn't know who the fuck I was. And I just kind of treat people the same no matter what. You know what I mean? It's like I don't, being around all those artists that Kate on, like, I didn't get starstruck there. I work with Tommy Chong. I definitely don't get starstruck there. You know? So for me, basketball is just another thing, you know?
Well, tell us about, so you're at the Warriors. Tell us about, you know, how you connected with Tommy and the beginning of Cannabis Club TV. And then we need to talk about that episode of the 421 show that I rewatched the other day when you sent it to me. I was there live when it happened, but we'll talk about that toward the end. But
okay.
How did the connection with Tommy happen, and how did the start of Cannabis Club TV come to be?
So I was introduced to Paris probably, I was probably 21 or 22 by my friend Garen. And Paris lived in Hollywood. He was Tommy's kid. And at this point, you know, we were young. We really didn't care about anybody. Like, so nobody really, like, gave Paris any special favors. He came up and surfed with us. And we started developing a friendship. And then when Paris had Chong Glass, and that was what got Tommy arrested. I was the person that helped build the website. I helped out with the accounting side of things. I was helping with like the business infrastructure. And then Tommy got busted and went to federal prison. And then so we kind of laid low for a while, all of us. I mean, dude, having the surf shop, the DEA was always watching us. I mean, we had people coming in from all over the world, doing all kinds of shit, smuggling all kinds of shit in. You know what I mean? It's definitely a story for later, but
yeah.
So we were already under the gun all over the place, and at that time we kind of split up. I just focused on surfing and doing skateboards.com, and then so when it circled back around in 2015, you know, Paris came to me and was like, "Hey, I'm starting this brand with my dad. It's going to be called, you know, Chong's Choice. You know, we want you involved in some level." And I was selling digital concourse at the arena, and we were using a friend of mine's company, Pete, to like power the kiosks. And even though I would do, you know, I would do $5,000 deals, I would do $250,000 deals. Didn't matter what size the deal was. Everybody wanted to be on that screen, and it was like, okay, it's just a TV, you know. But that TV moved. If we did a promotion for beer, if we did promotion for food items, for tickets, whatever, when we ran it on those screens, it moved people. It, for whatever reason, those two little screens.
You're talking about within the Santa Cruz Warriors arena
within
when
the
you
bowl,
first started using
right?
screens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I'm a pretty, like I said, I take apart things, so I learned how it all worked, and I was like, we all decided at that particular moment, Domingo's part of that too, that we would form a company called Cannabis Club TV and go into dispensaries and broadcast. This is before people were talking about over-the-top television or any sort of app-driven television. It was all still cable. So we were kind of
Netflix
like
was just coming out. Yeah.
Yeah, we were like a Roku before Apple TV, before Roku, before Pluto, before all those things. We were
Remember
broadcasting
TiVo?
before TiVo. Well, TiVo was there, but
but they were
streaming. So
TiVo was just for recording shows. Yeah.
And so I went to Tommy and I said, "Hey, man, I want you to be a part of this." And we signed the deal in Vegas, and then we subsequently got the inside front cover or front page of the LA Times, and the rest is kind of history at the moment.
Yeah, that's dope. That's dope. So, yeah, I mean, it grew. Obviously, we've been, connected. We're early investors and believed in the vision, and obviously, it's challenging times right now for everybody. But still, growing up how you did, and seeing the cannabis industry itself evolve over the years, how crazy is it from being, what you were doing in the '90s to now? It's considered essential business and protected by by the governor of California.
Well, is this thing going to shut off in 3 minutes, and are we going to restart, or does it go? How long?
Oh, yeah, probably. Is it 3 minutes? How long have we been going?
6:27. I'm down to keep talking. I just don't want people. If we drop off, people.
Yeah, so we'll have to restart it if we do. And I keep forgetting about that IG Live does have an hour limit. So if it cuts off everybody, we're going to restart.
Yeah. So I'll start my story. So first and foremost, like, again, some self-incriminating shit. Like, I've been moving weed for probably better part of 25 years. Like, not just eighths and ounces, but pounds and pounds. And driving with 30 or 40 pounds in your car from the Triangle down to go meet somebody.
I think unless you've done that at least once, like, I don't know.
Shit that people
are you even real, bro?
The shit that those guys had to do. I mean, look, we were making like at that time 40 pounds of weed was $200,000 of the weed. Like it wasn't peanuts. And so if you don't think it's gnarly, go watch Murder Mountain. It's not like that everywhere. But loyalty and trust thing comes in, like in the States, where if you've run packs and you've done things, and look, I wasn't a huge dealer, but I was moved with Santa Cruz. I knew there was a lot of weed around, and we could connect the dots. And therefore, for me, it's always been a medicine. For me, it's always been part of my life, and it's always been part of something that I've done. And so to see it be, to your point, to be an essential item right now it's definitely comes with bittersweet, emotions, in the sense that while everybody in the cannabis space is rejoicing that we've been deemed essential, doesn't really change the legislator's point of view, doesn't change the federal government's point of view. It's not releasing any cannabis incarcerated low offense criminals that are serving time. I mean, there's people still serving, life sentences for this plant, dude. So for me, I'm stoked to see it's essential. I just think we got to come correct on, working with people like Weldon Angelos and Steve D'Angelo through Last Prisoner Project and Green Mission Green. And there's a lot of people that are suffering, dude. So a lot of the rich white dudes from Wall Street can take in over, and that's just not cool.
Yeah. It's the same old story with a lot of different industries, right? Other folks, literally pay the price for it, and other people get to benefit from it. It's kind of a sad but true. It's happened with a lot of different things. Well, I tell you what, why don't we end there, and we'll continue on an actual podcast here in the next couple of weeks, hopefully.
Fair enough, man. Thank you.
Does that work? I think you and I can go on and on and on for sure. There's so many stories, so many mutual friends. I'm very grateful for your time. I'm very grateful for your
Pew, pew, pew.
Well, you know what? We can't end like that. We're going,
Nope.
Crystal Murphy.
We're gonna go
Murphy,
for another half an hour.
Crystal Murphy and I broke a record the other day. We're gonna go for that record.
I think there's some things that are left to be said too. You know
Yes.
that I'm just.
Well, first of all, I love the diversity of the crowd of people. The diversity of the crowd of people that are watching us today is insane, and I love it. And well, what I was saying before I cut off was that guys like us, especially with what you've been through, are built for times like this. You know, it's hard. You know, it's hard to go against the culture. It's hard to go against the grain. It's hard to be an entrepreneur. It's hard to be an outlaw when, yeah, there's some things, some elements of that, yeah, that maybe aren't always on the up and up. But there's also at the foundation of it was you wanted to do things on your terms. You wanted to help people. You didn't want anybody to really be able to tell you how to live your life. But because you've lived like that, when things like this happen, what's going on right now in the world, you're better suited for it because you're already living outside the lines and already doing things on your own terms. And most people, you know, whatever it is, 90% of people are not ready for the system, so to speak, to be changed on them like it has been.
Can I share something real quick?
Of course, of course.
So 2008, 2009, right when the recession hit, you know, that was my first. So mind you, I came from nothing, right? Sold my surf shop to Rip Curl, rebuilt up a skate empire, sold that, bought some houses, was doing good. 2008 took everything out. Took out my house in Salinas, took out my businesses, you know, back to square one. And most people at that point, like, they start doing drugs, they start drinking, they start, you know, life's over, right? And I'm kind of at a point where at that particular moment, I was like, well, time to strap up and try to figure out the next hustle, you know, and rebuild, you know, and everyone's like, what? I'm like, I'm coming back, watch, you know, and, you know, proceeded to get a job, first job I'd had in 20 years, you know, and then, you know, parlayed that job into working at the Warriors. And then in 2016, you know, was right after we had won the dual championship and things were good. I was looking at getting a VP position in the league. I was going to, you know, I was interviewing for jobs, you know, the D League or G League was expanding. Having come from a championship team, you're considered an asset. And then, and so in 2016, wife got diagnosed with a benign brain tumor. Dad was dying of opiates. And Tommy had got diagnosed with rectal cancer, literally all within the first week of March. And
this was in 2016?
2016.
That's crazy.
And my wife and I were separated at the time. We had only been living together because we were selling the Aptos house to get rid of it. And I
remember that.
You know, and so, you know, here it is, boom, she goes into the surgery, has this gnarly surgery. Like 2 or 3 days later, my dad rolls in, ends up dying. And then Tommy ended up beating rectal cancer. But at that particular moment, for me, just to kind of paint, here I was making $200,000 a year, you know, I was back, you know, and I left that to go jump into cannabis. And, you know, right at the same time, wife was recovering from brain surgery. She's like, hey, we just did a complete life swap up. We went from being two people that had professions that were running and, you know, dropping the kid off in between things to my wife decided that she would pick up some work from home. She would be a yard duty person. She works at the city water department. So she'd do a couple days there. And then I was able to, for 4 years, you know, pursue this startup thing, which was, you know, a lot of people wouldn't have done that after already losing everything in 2008. Literally, I watched $200,000 evaporate in like 4 months, you know, and, you know, you tend to be a little bit more conservative at that point. And I wasn't. Luckily, I was able to go ahead and take that on. And we took that on. And, you know, it was a lot of slim eating for 4 years as I built Cannabis Club TV and, you know, in a brand new industry where I didn't have experience. No one had experience. It was brand new. And, you know, now we actually did build something that was attractive enough for someone to acquire it. And I'm now on my second and third iterations. I'm still with them. But, you know, I guess my whole moral of that story is like, you know, without failure, you don't have success.
Yeah.
If you keep failing, then you got to kind of check yourself and pivot and do something different. But failure's okay, you know, and doing something hard's okay. And if it's not hard, it's probably not going to pay off. And you got to also be acceptant of putting in that work and failing. You know, that's something I think I've really mastered, is like, I can only give the best that I can give. And then if I fail still, then there's not anything else I could have done. You know, like, I give everything I have to my projects. And you see that, you know, when we worked with the Emerald Cup these last couple of years, like,
Yeah.
I have a work acumen and a level that I like to hit. And I don't really hold myself back. I think there's so many opportunities that if you're not doing what you love every single day, you probably should change it immediately. And that's scary. You know, sometimes people do 30-year, you know, careers, and then they're so unhappy that they're depressed, and then they're suicidal. And, you know, one thing I'm not going to go to my grave with is wishing I would have partied more, wishing I would have, you know, traveled more, wishing I would have, because I've fucking done it, dude. I've had a great life. And now for me, it's about raising my children and making sure they have that great life. And, like, ultimately generational wealth changes is what I'm looking for. You know, like, how can I make sure my family is secure? And not because I want to have class status. I never knew if we were going to get kicked out of our house when we were younger. So I just don't ever want anybody in my family to have to feel that shit. So the point is to take chances, take risks. If you fail, that's fine. Just keep going. It'll work itself out.
What are some practical ideas that you would give to people that maybe are home right now for the first time in years? They're home with their kids. They're home with their spouse. They're used to a traditional job, which may or may not be there in a couple of weeks. What would you do? Again, you've kind of been prepped for this life because you've already been living it for quite a while. For people that aren't used to it, what would you do? What would you recommend people can do now with the tools and technology that are at our fingertips to get ahead of this and be ready to make moves in the current situation and as it changes in the next few weeks to months? What would you do to position yourself to be ready?
So having started a business in the early 90s, you know, and essentially starting there when there was only traditional methodologies, you know, the thought of having like somebody refer you as a business just really wasn't necessarily happening, right? And so I think now I tell people there's so much opportunity everywhere. I mean, just find something that you really like to do and become really good at it, and then do it. You know, there's IG Live. It just, not everything has to be socially driven. Some of the best businesses ideas have come out of recessions and have come out of really down situations. You know, you look at the last recession we had in 2008, like Uber, Airbnb.
You know,
lots of great businesses, you know.
That's when me, Chad, and Domingo got started, was like 2007, 2008.
You know, and so I think you have to be a built-in hustler. You have to be willing to take some knocks. I think the other thing is too, you know, a lot of times people go into opportunities with only like the best is going to happen. And in reality, you know, it doesn't always work that way. You know, it's, sometimes shit hits the fan, and you have to be okay with that too. You know, I think you got to make sure two things to be a leader. One, you got to ask people that are smarter than you, you know, so like always search out advice. And number two, be willing to work harder than anybody else. You know, if there's anything I learned from being around Kobe back in the day, like just watching him play, that guy worked harder than everybody else. And he worked smarter though too. So it wasn't just that he was putting in the physical time. He was also like working smarter than everybody else. And then I think the final thing is balance yourself, man. Like, give yourself time to be happy. Give yourself time to relax. Give yourself time. If whatever you've chosen takes up every waking moment of your time, that might not be the right thing for you.
That's one thing I'll say I admire about you and guys in that world, is that you balance that. Like you said, you did all this other stuff just so you could surf. And a lot of people don't have that. I do this so that I can XYZ, right? So, and I think people know, like, and that's what I love about Gary Vee, is he talks about like, I would rather you know, make 50 grand a year and be happy and have time off and coach your kids thing, and you're running this like let's say you love video games or whatever it is that you're into, as opposed to just working a job you hate to make more money to buy more stuff. Like, I think
Well,
people are waking up to that reality.
you go into you're about 18 with people. Well, I didn't. My parents were pretty non-existent. I did whatever I wanted, but
Yeah.
most time people are programmed till they're 18, and they're kind of
Yeah.
shoved off in the world, and then shit, dude. I make lists every day.
Yeah.
I set objectives for myself. I set goals for myself every day. I make it a point to get uncomfortable. To do things that make me uncomfortable. Talk to people that I don't know. Just my collective social media is not something that I've really worked on, but I've got a lot of connections that I can tap into. And so,
for sure.
It's one of those things where I believe that if you're not making yourself uncomfortable, you're not taking risks that you think are going to better yourself, no one's going to come knock on your door unless you're playing the Publishers Clearinghouse to give you money. It's like, it's never going to happen. So you have to
Most people under 30 don't get that reference.
Yeah, I know. Sorry. Well, no, Harvey's doing it. I see Steve Harvey doing it still. But the point
Most
is
people under 30 don't know who Steve Harvey is.
Whatever you want to do, I tell people, write it down, dude. This is going to sound weird. Every day in the mirror, I have a conversation with myself. Every day.
It's not weird.
Are you fucking ready for today? What are we doing? What are we going to go do? Are we going to fucking smash this, or are we going to be a pussy? What are we doing? Let's go. And then I literally hype myself up to go do shit.
I think the politically correct term for that is affirmations.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I give myself affirmations in the morning, how I'm telling myself I need to work out more. But it's like, I think you just got to tell yourself that you got to believe in yourself. You got to love yourself before you try to do anything. Otherwise, forget it. You're not going to have any success. It's just not going to happen.
Very, very good advice. What, without maybe giving away too much of what your exact plans are, what are some things that you personally, even with the craziness going on out there? Well, first of all, what are your thoughts on what's going on? Second of all, what are your personal kind of plans during and post, moving forward?
So what's going on right now is, never been, it's kind of like, I use the analogy of when the Indians saw, Christopher Columbus's ships coming ashore, they had never seen ships. So they couldn't even understand what that image was,
Right.
I think a lot of people are going through that right now, and a lot of people are in denial. A lot of people are scared. There's a lot of uncertainty in the air. For me, that's like my briar patch. My entire life is uncertainty, you know what I mean? And so it's a familiar feeling for me, so I don't get freaked out. But I think people that are having that uncertainty, it's okay to be scared. It's okay to be not okay. And if you need to talk to people, like, hit me up. I'm down. I'll give you a little counseling session. If it's above my pay grade, I've got a great counselor I can refer you to. And
same here.
And I think at the same time, right now is the most opportunity it's ever going to be in the cannabis space. It's never going to get any cheaper than it is right now to get in. And there's a lot of titans that are falling. Aurora, Canopy, the first generation of people are falling right now. And there's a lot of the pieces that can be picked up. I think post this, again, I'm working with Enlighten still. We're still very much focused on expanding the CCTV footprint and doing all that. And I'm looking to do more podcasts personally. I'm looking to do more media-based stuff personally. I really like it. Had a really great time filming the Emerald Cup. Like it
was awesome.
That's a great time. I love working with Tommy. Super fun. And then I think at the end of the day, on the other side of it, I'm gonna probably have my hands in a couple things. I'm already got my hands in a couple things right now with regards to like dispensaries or brands or distribution and multi-state. I think the next big play is multi-state brands going out and finding partners like Cookies has and other brands have to expand the footprint,
Yep. That's awesome. Well, I think obviously we could go on and on. I think we've covered quite a bit, and I'm asking for everybody that I talk to like this to commit to a future vlog and podcast. Basically, what I would like to do is like an in-studio podcast, like what you have, the setup that you have, and tell us about that before we go. And then also do like a day in the life, kind of behind the scenes, follow you around Santa Cruz kind of thing, and go to some of your favorite spots or something like that. But tell us about Cannabis Karaoke and what you're doing with that.
So I'm working on 2 different podcasts, and sorry if I'm inappropriate. I come from a different lifestyle. We used to say
it's okay. It's okay.
So if I offended anybody, I apologize, but that's just what it is. And so I'm working on a couple different things. I'm working on Cannabis Karaoke, which the reason I chose that name is I feel like when you do karaoke, you kind of stand up and try to do your best. And, you know, when you're talking about people's stories of their lives, like it's not always perfect, you know, and
Mm-hmm.
it's a lot of hard work. And so I wanted to take a spin on, you know, that we're all just trying to stand up at the mic and perform in this space right now. And
Yep.
then I'm working with Aaron Silverman from Media Gel on a show called 421 Show. We
Mm.
interviewed Tommy Chong at the Emerald Cup.
Yep.
But we also have interviewed Tim Blake and Jim McAlpine and so many heavy hitters. And that's more of a video one
David
where we're
Tran,
actually,
right? Yeah.
you know, on a video. We have a set and everything. We filmed like 42 episodes in like 3 weeks. And so we're still leaking episodes out right now.
Didn't you do one with Steve D'Angelo? Was it Susan Soros in the limo in Vegas or something like that?
I did it in the real Cannabis. Enlighten has
Oh,
this
in the
bus
bus.
that's
That's
amazing.
Okay.
It's like looks like a dispensary. And
Yeah.
so we interviewed Mary Bailey, who's from Maui, who's
Mary
an amazing
Bailey,
lady, and Steve D'Angelo about his Last Prisoner project, and just talked to him a little bit about that. But you know, look, there's a core group of people, Jordan, that we run with that are always going to be like, and there's probably a couple hundred of them, maybe upwards of 1,000. I'm talking mainly West Coast players that are going to be in this mix. So, you know, if you are interested in getting in cannabis, if you are thinking about the space finally, now is a good time to jump in. And guys like us always have something happening. So I think the biggest advice I would leave everybody with is, you know, you may get ignored, but don't not reach out. Don't not send a message. Don't not send an email or a text, or, you know, try to get someone's phone number to go forward. So
I think if you have something real and you're authentic and you're genuine and you're trying to bring value, it'll work out. You know, I think that's what we've always been this way, you know, without having an agenda, just genuinely trying to be a good friend and contribute, and things just kind of have a way of building from there and working themselves out. So people, you know, don't have a scarcity mentality, even in a time like this. Have an abundance mentality and see how you can give and serve to a situation, and eventually it'll come back to you. And that's, we've seen that time and time
100%,
again.
man. Don't
At
do
the same
anything
time,
with expectations, you know?
At the same time, there comes a point, and I think both of us are coming to that point, individually and collectively, where it's time to kind of step up and do our own thing, and really take ownership of the moment and of the opportunities that we've had, because we've helped so many people along the way, which is great, and I don't regret that. But it's time. There comes a time where you need to also help yourself.
Yeah, people, you know, unless you ask for stuff, you know, like you'll hear me say, like, I don't do anything that I don't get paid for, right? And so right now, like for 2020, I've already told myself, you know, I'm limiting myself to only so many opportunities. So it's almost like these opportunities have to try out for me. I don't try out for them, you know, but that comes from having put the work in. And to your point, like, you got to.
Paris just joined us, by the way. What's up, Paris? Paris.
What up, P? You have to put the work in order to get the work out, you know. And if you immediately come in thinking that you're going to do something and get paid for it, that's probably not going to happen. You need to kind of earn your stripes.
So speak to that. For the people that, okay, if you're just getting started, you need to earn your stripes and put the work in. But let's say you've done that. How do you go from that season to finally really taking ownership and taking that next step?
Well, I think you have to really put down some goals for yourself. Again, nothing comes without a goal. And so if your goal is to get paid to do podcasting, if your goal is to be in this, all right, don't be afraid to take a risk and do something that is below you, right? Like when I lost I had to take a job that paid me $20,000 a year. You know, I was used to making $20,000 a month. So you have to be humble. But then you get to a point where if you feel, it's like trying out for the big leagues, you know, if you feel like you can actually jump out there and go do something that nobody else thinks you can do, well then throw your hat in the ring, man. Like there's no better reward for me than to be told this is your ship to sink. You know what I mean? If you sink this ship, it's yours. And so, you know, I'm down to try to sink a ship, you know?
Well, this is, you know, like I said, you've had a few cycles. You've had a few cycles that you've been through in your career. And, you know, shit, I was talking to Chris about this the other day. The main black swans, so to speak, that have happened in my lifetime that I can remember is like '89 earthquake, right? Loma Prieta. I hit us all pretty hard. I was a kid at that point. And then I think I was in kindergarten, and then 9/11, I think I was my senior year of high school. So that was, you know, big, but it was obviously mentally effective, but I didn't really feel it economically because I was still in school. But I would say the 2008, the housing crisis and all that kind of stuff. But that's, like I said, when Domingo, Chad, and I got started together and separately around that time, we got opportunities that we would have not otherwise have gotten, right? So just a few years ago,
for sure.
Owners of restaurants and bars wouldn't have taken the time to even meet with us, let alone say, hey, you can have a whole night. So we because times were hard, we came in, we were hungry, we didn't even have a plan, but all of a sudden we got the keys to almost every spot in Monterey. They said, if you can get people here, you guys can get people in these doors, you can do whatever you want. And we said, okay. And all of a sudden we were the DJ, the bouncer, the promoter, the cook, the booking agent, and then all this, that's what it was. It was like, here, fine, take it. We literally got a couple bars and restaurants and said, it's your ship to sink. And instead of sinking it, we made it blow up. And not everything we did was successful, but for those couple of years there, we were on fire. And then it opened up the doors to everything that we're doing now. But we got started at a time like this.
I think success is something that's also not necessarily measured the same way that everybody else. Most people measure success by money in the bank. To me, right. It's like money in the bank is a great byproduct, and it's something you need to have in order to keep going. But sure. I think if you could, like, I had a guy, I did a talk the other day for this intimate group of eBay and Amazon flippers, right? Like, it was crazy.
Yeah.
And the one guy's like, look, I've sold $5 million worth of stuff, and I still don't feel like I'm a success yet. And I'm like, well, you're measuring your success incorrectly then.
Right.
Because
right.
To me, if you set out to do something and you actually get it done, you might get a D on that paper, but you still finished it. You know what I mean? And
right.
So that's still some success.
I agree. No, I agree. And that's how I've had to look at the last decade, is that I didn't have a lot to show for it financially because we didn't really have a plan, and it was just kind of like along for the ride. But you couldn't buy the experiences that we've had. You know what I mean? You can't buy those memories. You can't buy those relationships. And so I look at it for me as like, I got my PhD. I went to school for 10 years. I learned who's who and what's what. Not that I have it all figured out, but I have quite a good understanding of how things work now. And now I'm excited to kind of start my career and start business, having gone through that training. And I mean, it's invaluable. You couldn't have paid for the education that we've gotten in the last decade. And so I'm excited now because it started in a time like this. And here we are again, 10, 12 years later.
Yeah, and I think also because we're shining now doesn't mean we were always shining. We were dull before. We had to pay our dues, and people see when you're up. Like, they only see when you're up. When you're standing on the podium and you're taking you're winning that award or whatever, and they're like, yo, dude, life just comes easy for you. You're all, dude, you know how many bowls of shit I had to eat to get here?
Yeah. Well, I think that's so our start, not only was it at the beginning of a bad economy, but it was also the beginning of social media. And so we were early adapters, as you were as well, to social media. And the good thing about that is it allowed us to grow our network exponentially very fast. But it also, for the longest time in social media, the first phase was a lot of fake, right? A lot of pretending, a lot of stunting, a lot of flexing, some of it legitimate, some of it not. And for me, moving forward, I don't want to participate in the fake flexing. I think, but this, not only the humility, but I think this is where guys like us, I think the next phase of social media and the next phase of being an entrepreneur, and there's already people that are kind of leading that way, is more of a behind the scenes, keeping it real, showing the process, not just the result. So that's what I'm committed to do. Yeah, exactly. I like that. That's what I'm committed to do for the next decade, that I wasn't per se able to do the last decade, is really show the process and the behind the scenes. And I think that's where both you and I are gonna have cool stories.
Yeah, people tapping into what we've, some of our failures. Like, that's where I said, like, if you want to do something, like, reach out. Don't send me with some canned response. Like, if you write me a personal email or a personal LinkedIn, or you send me a DM, I usually answer all those things, And I'll tell you what, I had interaction, and I don't know if she's still on, but Alex Frost, she's an amazing girl, amazing person. She's running a B2B virtual event coming up on 4/1 and 4/2, and you know, if you looked at her Instagram account, she's just building it up, but she has a great story. Dude,
Yeah.
I interviewed her. She's a firecracker, bro. Like,
Nice.
most of
Nice.
the people would have just looked over it because they'd have been, oh, they don't have a big social media following. Oh, what is this thing? They would have like never be afraid to take a meeting, never be afraid to take a phone call,
Yes.
never look
Yes.
at it as wasting time.
Right.
Always take that opportunity because you just never know who you're going to run into or
Absolutely.
who you're talking to. You know?
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate your time. I appreciate your stories. You know, I appreciate your friendship, and I'm excited. You know, of course, I'm concerned, and my heart goes out to everyone right now dealing with a lot. Right? There's obviously shout out to all the medical people on the front lines. Shout out to the people working in groceries and you know, driving to.
Please just stay
All
home.
the people that are working in essential jobs, we thank them, and the people that aren't and that can afford to stay home, please stay home and help us flatten this and get back to normal as soon as possible. In the meantime, if you have resources or you need help with anything, you know, like you said, Danny said, reach out to us. If we can't help you, we probably know who can, and you know, we're always here to help us and do whatever we can.
One caveat: if we make an intro or we help you out, just don't be a turd and fuck it up. Like, you know what I mean? Like, don't make my recommendation bad, or don't make
of course
bad.
Of
like,
course.
Respect that recommendation, and if you fail, that's fine. I'm not even talking about that. That's cool.
Yeah.
But just treat that connection with the utmost respect.
Of course.
You know, 'cause then what happens is, if we go recommend again, they'll go, oh, I remember you sent that one guy to me, you know, and we only have so many of those.
You know, what's funny about that is that I used to do it indiscriminately. I used to just whatever, no big deal. And now actually I'm here to help, of course, but there's a lot of things that I won't do anymore just because I've learned. And so my thing is like, I want to help the people. I want to help the people that actually need our help, not the posers, not the moochers, not the backstabbers, not the haters. Like, and we have been through enough to know who's who and what's what. So don't waste our time. If you genuinely need help, we're here to really help people that need it. And it's so funny because, like you said, people are haters behind the scenes, and then want to kiss your ass in person. Oh, hey, bro, what's up? You got tickets for me? Can I get VIP? Me and my lady. I'm like, who are you? And then you find out that they're the ones that were, you know what I mean? It's just how it goes.
Oh, dude, listen. One thing you know about me, dude, is I call them out right to their face. You know, and so I'm fine with shade. If you want to throw shade or you want to be a hater, just don't ride my sack if you're hating on me. At the same time.
You're right, or have the balls to let's talk about it face to face, man to man.
Yeah,
you know,
let's squash it. Let's figure it out. Like,
if you have a genuine problem, maybe I am at fault, and we can talk about it.
Absolutely, I'm not perfect, man, but at the same time, just like you know, one thing I like about you and I like about our group of people is that, like, we open with saying congratulations on what you're working on. Congratulations.
Oh, of course.
Not enough people are genuinely stoked for their friends.
We're stoked. I'm genuinely stoked for all of us. Yeah, for sure.
When people get a new car or they're coming up, you know, most of the time people are like, why didn't that happen to me? Why didn't I get that?
Right.
Why didn't I? Like, don't think that way. You know what I mean?
Well,
like,
don't be crabs in a bucket, right? And
just
it's more of
for your friends, dude. Be stoked
if your friend use the,
you know, pay to go to it. If your friend's an artist or a comedian or a musician, don't try to get on the list. Buy a ticket, you know?
Well, that's what I was going to say is that this time around, I think there's a lot of folks like yourself and myself who have a lot of favors stored up, and I'm excited to cash them in with each other, meaning that we've all made the mistake of helping the wrong person. We've all made the mistake of using our good name for a bad situation. And I think we've learned from that. And now moving forward, that circle has gotten smaller. That community is stronger. And really, we have a way of weeding out the bullshit and really just, you know, making it happen for each other. And think about how much time and energy was wasted on the wrong people in situations. And now if we consolidate those efforts, it's just going to multiply that much faster of like, hey, if we just mess with and work with the right people, we don't need to waste time because we have the talent within the team or close near it, and we can get this done quickly, whatever it is, whether it's media or business or events or, you know, nonprofit, whatever it might be.
Just be genuine and be okay and embrace your L's as much as you champion your W's. And if you fail, you fail. And, you know, I don't like letting anybody down either, you know, but you always have that chance of blowing it. I mean, I think doing the cup this last year was the biggest responsibility I'd taken on in a couple years for that.
You guys killed it. You killed it.
And we did a great job, but we had a great team with all those guys, and we were able to communicate, and we were able to pull it off. And, you know, that doesn't come without other people helping you. You know, one of the things that I always, you know, I may be the guy that's spearheading an idea or championing the opportunity, but it takes a team of people to pull things off. And you're so much better to win as a team than you are to try to win solo. You know,
it feels so much better. Yeah. So where can everybody find you, and what should they follow, and where can everybody find your stuff?
So on Instagram, it's at Ricky Danny. On LinkedIn, it's Danny Keith, just at Danny Keith. Those are the two places I probably populate the most. Facebook is Danny Keith as well. My companies are Cannabis Club TV, GetEnlightened.io, CannabisKaraoke.tv, 421show.tv.
Nice.
And, you know, I'll be at an event near you someday. It might be standing next to you, handing you that J.
Yeah, right. Most likely. Awesome, brother. Have a great rest of your day. Tell your family I said hello. We'll be in touch, man.
Love you, brother.
Right.
Thank you.
Love you too, man. Take care.
Peace.